Welcome to the Underground. Today is Tuesday, November 18th, and this is the second installment in the series Ancient Kemet and Other African Contributions to Astrology. If you're new here, welcome to EarthtoneS. I am your hostess, Kakala Moon. Please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing the video. We're going through an initiation of sorts as a collective. And it is my opinion that in this transformation, we are learning about the path of the sun in the underworld, in other words, below the horizon, through the winter 2025. And there are a couple of corrections that I'd like to make from the last video. I remembered in hindsight identifying Khnum, the ram-headed netter who fashioned man on the potter's wheel. Uh, I identified him as Khonsu. I had Khonsu on my mind, which I identified after that. Khonsu is the falcon head son of Amun, the unseen presence of God, which represents our shadow side, the dark side of the sun in the underworld, and goddess Mut, the cosmic mother of the universe. Khnum protects Osiris, or Wsir, in the barge as they travel the underworld at night. He has a falcon head like Heru, who is the son of Asar and Aset, which most of us are familiar with. Heru is exalted during the day, and it is Heru who scopes the horizon and gives us the word horoscope. And we'll address that in a minute. I also said that ancients circumvented the globe when in fact they actually circumnavigated the earth as we noticed the ley lines, and we're going to start there. But I found it ironic as I pull it up that the Adams calendar is on the 30th parallel, whereas the Great Zimbabwe is also on the 30th parallel, as well as the Giza Plateau. So that just goes to show that the history or the migration story began in the southern regions of South Africa and moved northward. Although in the Nile Valley, they recognized the southern region as Upper Kemet and the lower regions as uh, Lower Kemet. So we were looking at the Neteru and established that it was the ancients who were the archetypes of the architect. And this ram-headed neter that you see in the green face beside Sekhmet is Khnum, the neter who fashioned man on the potter's wheel. And just to readdress this procession here, this is the spiral. The ancients recognized that time or energy moved in a spiral as opposed to a line, and as well as a circle, because the way that we look at it in 2D, usually on paper or on the screen, it appears as though it's a circle, but it is a spiral. Their objective was to join heaven and earth. They saw heaven as the order of earth, or they recognized earth as the order of heaven, the order of things below. And it just so happened that around, well, we are familiar with the Younger Dryas, which happened around 12,800 BC, and or 11,800 BC, 12,900 years ago is what I'm trying to say here. But there was another incident that happened around 3000 BC or 4000 BC. There is a paper that was published around 93, and this paper is called The Genesis and Collapse of the Third Millennium of Northern Mesopotamian Civilization. And it is published in the 20th of August 93 Science Journal Teleline edition. So it was between 3300 BC and 1200 BC when there was a volcanic eruption. And this was due to climate change, similar to what we are experiencing today, because, of course, everything is cyclical. And so the Akkadian Empire, which lived in, or who lived in southern Mesopotamian, fell, I'm trying to say Mesopotamian properly, they fell as a result of the Burckle crater, which is said to have happened in the Indian Ocean. And so this tsunami that took place had to have extended throughout the Levant and up the canal areas. So you had these migrating people around this time, and they were gathering in the educational and cultural centers around the Nile Valley. And so there was these disturbances and clashes of cultures, and there was a need for Ma'at. And so Narmer was asked to join with King Zoser in bringing balance to the land. And in doing so, it is said that the wisdom from the Yorubas, the Axumites, the Meroites, and the Bantu kingdoms exchanged mutual ideas and had a mutual influence in the common matrix of the area. And so in 3100 BCE, they unified both Upper and Lower Egypt as a centralized state. And so the famous Narmer palette is inscribed and etched with the word ritual, because this is one of the divination techniques and methods that were used as they were bringing balance to the land. They were bringing offerings and doing rituals of that nature. But I wanted to also read an excerpt from a publication that also shows or indicates who the people were in this area. And this publication is called Medium, and the article is written by Kwame Adape, and he has a logo here of the Sankofa bird. But he starts out by indicating that in his very first book, The Akan, Other Africans, and the Sirius Star System, he posits that historical accounts from ancient writers such as Herodotus and from more recent writers such as Robert Morning, Sky, and Robert Temple point to the fact that the Sumerians called themselves black-headed, while the Egyptians have also been known to call themselves black-footed. And so he's making the argument of the descriptions and characteristics of these people as they were migrating and as they established Sumer during this time before the Semite people came in and invaded the land. But he's going on to say that the civilizations of antiquity and their influence on the current age in terms of literature were the Minoan and Greek cultures, and maybe the Indus Valley. So this is where astrology comes in, because these people were interacting with one another, but there was no mention about Mesopotamia and even about ancient Egypt. But the Greek narrative is still, he's saying here, so strong in the minds of the public. Of course, credit should be given where credit is due, but he thinks that there has been such a downplay or outright disregard for other cultures existing much longer than any of those that have been mentioned. And so he goes on to talk about the empires that existed during that time. And I'll just maybe mention a couple, but I'm getting to the point where he's reading from a an author by the name of Lenormant. And this author, Francois Lenormant, lived between 1837 and 1883. And he was an Assyriologist and archaeologist who was among the foremost Assyriologists in France during his time. And so over the past years, this author here, Kwame, studied Francois Lenormant's work titled Chaldean Magic, which he believes to be the first written in 1874 in French and later translated in English. And he's saying here in chapter 6, or from chapter 6, Francois Lenormant wrote about the Cushites. To the Greeks, the name Sephaenes or Sephenes was synonymous with Ethiopians. The opinion, which has been preserved by Hellenicus, counts them as one of the two elements of the race inhabiting the countries watered by the lower course of the Euphrates and Tigris. The famous Ethiopians or Cushites of Babylon, whose existence is proved by so many passages of classical antiquity and sacred writings. The Bible connects with these Cushites the name of Nimrod, which is used both as the name of a hero and the name of a place, like all those contained in the same chapter of Genesis. But the other elements of the nation in the dualism of Chaldees and Sephenes consisted of Chaldees, who are described by Diodorus Siculus in a very correct passage about their discipline and their ideas as the most ancient, and quote, the most ancient of the Babylonians. Hellenicus said in the same way, following the example of Stephen of Byzantium, that before the king Cepheus, that is to say, before Sephenes, there were some Chaldees who extended beyond Babylon as far as Koche, as far as the place where Seleucia afterwards stood. And that was in 1877. So he's asserting, this is Lenormant, that the Ethiopians or Cushites were the ones that were in Babylon at that particular time. So to say that, I'll end that there and we'll move on. And as I mentioned, maybe that we're starting here with the season of Aset because we're emphasizing the role of Ma'at in the region and the cultivation of these ideas in the hub of education and building, because they felt like if we or they were going to mirror the heavens, then they needed to bring order to the land through building. And so this is where the Freemasonry idea came into view, and as part of the ancient Kemetans. And so all of the Freemasonry concepts and symbolism you will find on the Giza Plateau. But our set season ended at the end of October. And it just shows here like the standard or classic zodiac, the ruling planets, and compatible signs to our set season. And of course, this is done in a very modern type of way, but it just emphasizes that she has a lot of Cancerian and moon characteristics, such as nurturing, and she's our set. So she represents Venus, beauty, and sociability, adaptability, and all of these nurturing qualities, of course, because she's Heru's mother. And so Heru is where we get the word horoscope, because it is Heru, Aset, and Asar's son, who is scoping the horizon on a daily basis. And he's scoping the stars to because they map the stars, and because they took a lot of stock in what the heavens represented. It represented the macrocosm of the microcosm, and they saw the cyclical and patterns that took place from season to season. And one that was most important, of course, being the rising and flooding of the Nile. And symbology was the utmost important to them. And so that's another reason why I wanted to start in Libra season, although the stars are also still very much between Libra and Libra and Scorpio at this particular time. But Libra sits on the horizon. It is the sunset. And this is another reason why I chose, because I thought it to be befitting going into the underworld, starting at sunset. And so this sunset is also representative of the Omega. Most of us that have been raised to read the biblical scriptures know that the I Am states that that he is the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. Excuse me, that would be this symbol here of the Omega. It is also the symbol of the Neteru, and the Neteru are the life forces, expressions of nature, which they were very they held in very high reverence or and regard. And then you have the mathematics. So we had Imhotep as the mathematician, the architect, the physician, the theologian or philosopher, sharing and this knowledge with those who were his pupils and his students. And later it was the Greeks who benefited from this knowledge. And so this symbology traveled the globe, actually, because there you have this Omega symbol being represented in the Chinese garden as the moon gate. It's being represented in Sumer as they advance later on. You have the Shin, and the Shin is representative of protection and closure. And they elongated the Shin to protect the name. So this is where we get the protection of a name and how important the name was. And we'll get into more of that a little later. But this symbology was very important to them. And here we have an example of how we transit through the spheres, and the moon being the first orb that we travel through, and the last, the first orb we travel through when we leave the planet, and of course, it is the last orb before we come to the earth to live our lives, to be incarnate. Saturn represents the physical world. The moon represents the womb energy, soul energy, and we will get into the solstitial gates because Cancer is the gates of man, and Capricorn is where we have the gates of the gods. And Saturn rules Capricorn, the moon rules Cancer. And we'll end it there, family, for today, and pick it back up in the next video. Let's see here. Please like the video, consider subscribing and sharing the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Y'all take it light. All right? Peace.